everyone, how are you doing? I hope that you are doing so very well. It has been so long since I have actually filmed a video. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the main reason is that I got sick with the flu. So that's why this wrap up for January is super duper late, because I literally got sick on the day that I was going to film my wrap up. So what can you do? I read 10 books in January. Pretty good reading month for me. Good kickstart to the year. So now let's get into the books. First up is Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. This is about two characters named Juliet and Declan. Juliet's mom has recently died, and Declan is kind of the school bad boy. Juliet has been writing letters to her mother and leaving them on her grave, and Declan is serving his volunteer time in that graveyard, and he ends up writing back on one of the letters, and they start a correspondence back and forth. Eventually they're gonna find out who each other is, things are gonna happen, but that's all I really want to tell you because I feel like it gets a little bit spoilery past that point. It wasn't the best contemporary ever, but it dealt with a lot of really hard subjects, and I really liked the progression of both Declan and Juliet's characters. This was actually my first read of the year, and all in all, it was pretty great, so I'm not mad about it. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is the entire Dustlands trilogy by Myra Young. I'm just going to talk about all of these together because the plot is just going to be the plot of the first book, and I can only talk about general feels for the rest of the books. Blood Red Road is about a girl named Saba, and she has lived with her brother and her little sister and her dad in this really like wasteland area for a long time, and then one day randomly these guys come and kill her father and take her brother away, and she's like, what the crap is happening? What's going on? And so she follows her brother and then ends up getting kidnapped to go to this town and fight, and finds out she can survive pretty well in this dystopian world. I have not read a dystopian in a long while, and I really enjoyed it. I actually got this whole trilogy from Book Outlet. You can see all the books I have ever bought at Book Outlet down below. Shameless plug. Because Books and Lala was talking about this book at some point on some social platform. I think it might have been her Instagram story, and was like, I really liked this. And then I was like, okay, I'll get the whole trilogy. I have to do things in overabundance because that's who I am. There's a lot of really interesting messages in this book. There's a lot of non-violence, especially in the third book, that I really enjoyed seeing. And then also obviously talking about taking care of the environment, taking care of the earth, because it's a total wasteland in this book. The main thing I think I liked of this trilogy is seeing Saba grow as a character. She changes so much and goes through so much throughout this whole trilogy and really comes into herself as a character. Overall, I really enjoyed this trilogy. I gave Blood Red Road and Rebel Heart a 4 out of 5 stars, and Raging Star, the third book, a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked the ending of the trilogy. It was a little open-ended, but I liked it. If you're in the mood for a dystopian, check this out. Next up is Wanderlust by Jen Malone. And when I picked this up, I was really in the mood for a contemporary, and this did not disappoint at all. This is about a girl named Aubrey, and when something happens that's kind of her fault, and her sister can't go to her summer job of leading a group of elderly people through Europe as a tour guide, Aubrey steps in and takes her place, pretending to be her sister, and obviously hijinks ensue because Aubrey was not prepared for this. Things get a little more complicated when the tour company owner's son joins the trip, and maybe there's some sparks there, maybe they're flirting a little bit, and she's like, I should not fall for him when I'm pretending to be my sister, but here we are. This book made me want to travel so much. I was like, take me to Europe. At one point they go on like a Sound of Music tour, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go. The love interest was super cute. It was really romantic. There's just so much happening, and then there's even some like really heavy and sad stuff in this book. It was totally unexpected, but it was so good, and I loved it so much. And it was just the perfect contemporary when I needed it. Loved it. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Unqualified by Stephen Furtick. This is a nonfiction Christian book. I actually took a weekend away and like turned my phone off and read this book, read my Bible. It was really great, and this book is really about how God uses unqualified people to fulfill his purpose. He talks a lot about Jacob in this book, and I really loved all the comparisons and how God really does not use the best people or the brightest people necessarily, but he uses the people who want to be used by him. And that's something I struggle with a lot, is like feeling like I'm not qualified or like I'm not the best for the job. So this book really spoke to me, and I know this is a lot of like Christianese for those of you that aren't Christians, so if you're interested, it's really good, really short, and it's really told like a story. It doesn't feel very non-fiction-y. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is a book that has been recommended to me over and over and over again again. Lots of friends love this book and I was like, okay, finally gonna read it, see what the hype is about. The hype did not disappoint. This is about a boy named Laszlo, and he kind of had a tragic upbringing, but one of the things he's always known about for a very long time is this city, and one day he feels the city's name disappear and in its place comes the name Weep. He's determined to figure out everything about the city, and he ends up going to work in a library and collects all of this information, and then one day a caravan of people from Weep, from the unseen city, come to his town, and he ends up kind of talking himself into going to this city. It's not quite what he expected because the city is dealing with some difficult things and trying to fix a problem that they're hoping all these people they've brought back to the city can solve. This book was so beautiful and it ended on such a cliffhanger that I need the next book now. I think Muse of Nightmares comes out this year. Laszlo's character development was very great. Romance tones in this book were really great. All the different side characters and side plots and things happening and things that you discover during Laszlo's time in Weep, all amazing. Most of the stuff I want to say is very spoilery, but it's just really good. If you're not into it, just give it like 150 pages, believe me. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is one of my most anticipated reads for 2018, and that is Save the Date by Morgan Matson. If you've been around here long enough, you know that Morgan Matson is my favorite author, and she actually sent me this book herself, and I'm so thankful, so thank you, Morgan, for this. Let me get to the plot, and then I'll tell you some of my feels, but not all of my feels, because this book doesn't come out until June, and then you will get a full review video from me. This is about a girl named Charlie. She's grown up with older siblings her whole life, and at this point, all of her siblings, I think except for one, are out of the house, but they're all coming back for her sister's wedding, and then things start happening. One thing after another starts going wrong for this wedding, and Charlie's really trying to keep it all together, trying to make sure they have the perfect family weekend. I loved this a lot. I feel like it's very different for a Morgan Matson book, and that's something I actually really enjoyed about it. I loved the family dynamics, I really loved Charlie, the main character, and I really liked that there were so many hijinks and like things happening all the time throughout this whole book. It made it very interesting and there was never a dull moment. So keep an eye out for this. I'm so excited for all of you to read this whenever it comes out. Next up is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This was my book club book for the month. I've actually already read All the Light We Cannot See, and I liked it then, but this time around I absolutely loved it. I don't know what it was, but it was just really even better this time. This book is about Marie-Laure and Werner. Marie-Laure lives in France and she is living through the occupation of France whenever World War II is happening, and Werner is a kid that lives in Germany in kind of an orphanage during the rise of World War II, and he kind of gets pulled into all of that because he's really good at radios and fixing radios, while Marie-Laure and her father go to this coastal town trying to get away from the Nazis, and her dad might be carrying some precious cargo from the museum that he works at. So this just follows both of their stories because they end up in the same city on the same day. It's just really beautiful how everything comes together. It's very character driven, a lot of character development, and I love that about a book. If you haven't read this or heard of this book, I'm surprised, but you really should. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And last up is the winner of the books that I had you pick from last time, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Shonda McGuire. This was my favorite book that I read in January, so thanks for picking it. This is about a school for children who have stumbled into other worlds and then come home. So like when Alice goes to Wonderland and then comes back, when she's having trouble with life readjusting, she would go to this school, and that's where all of these kids are. They've all been to different kinds of worlds, but they're trying to reconcile the real world with the worlds that they travel to, and many of them are still trying to find a doorway back to the world. In this book we follow Nancy and her journey when she starts at this school, but she is really determined that she's going back to the land of the dead, which is where she was. But once she gets to the school, tragedy starts striking and it keeps happening, and so the kids are trying to figure out the mystery of what's happening and why all of these tragedies and things are happening, and Nancy may look a little suspicious since she just got there. This book, as you can see, is very short. It's 169 pages, which a lot of times you don't expect there to be a full story in that short of a book, and this book pulled it off, which is very impressive to me. It's so whimsical and wonderful and has a very diverse cast of characters. There's a trans character, there's a bisexual character, Nancy, the main character, is asexual. There's also a lot of ethnicities represented, and it's just so good. So good. I can't wait to pick up the other books in this series because I need to read more of this immediately. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And now it's time for you to help me pick a book that I'm going to read in March, since it's the end of February right now. I was also told that you can make a poll on a YouTube video now. Didn't know that. So that's what we're going to do this time, instead of you guys leaving comments down below, just check the poll at the end, place your votes. First up is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, The Language of Thorns by Lee Bardugo, Vengeance Road by Erin Bowman, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, and last but not least is Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken, because I still haven't read this book. So here are all those books. Make your choices, cast your votes, and then I will read that book in March. That's it for this video. Let me know down below what the first book you read this year was. What was the very first book that you chose to read in January? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.